home of the widow Mary Thompson, and that is the headquarters of General Robert E. Lee for the next 2 days. Now, you see an upturned cannon tube. When on the battlefield, wherever you see an upturned cannon tube, that means that is the headquarters site of a high-ranking officer. That's where an officer was killed. The same thing. So every battlefield has their own procedure. And all these other buildings on my left would not have been here. These would have been all golden fields of wheat at the time. 3 historic structures on the campus at the time and here today. Left not here at the time of the battle, built around all named after the founder of the seminary, the Reverend Simon Samuel Schmucker. That's where the students would have resided. That's where they had their classes. Who arrives? John Reynolds, an officer killed on day 1. He's going to arrive here with his staff. Lee's army will launch waves of attack against the Union forces to your left, to the east, at a place called Cemetery Ridge and Cemetery Hill. And you'll begin to see some large monuments in the distance. It was sculpted by a gentleman who you may be familiar with, because when Lee does leave Gettysburg in defeat after 3 days of battle, he'll have suffered in excess of 28,000 casualties. 1 in 4 will be in North Carolina. So North Carolina will suffer the highest total casualties of the 11 Confederate states. This is where on July 3rd, after a massive Confederate preliminary artillery bombardment, 12,500 Confederate infantry, 3 divisions, like a frontal assault. But what Lee had gauged is that on day 2, July 2nd, against the Union Army on their flanks, their left flank and their right flank of General George Gordon Meade's battle line. So General Robert E. Lee reasoned that when they reinforced their flanks with reinforcements, that General Meade had weakened his center to the expense of his flanks. Lee approximately will position himself to observe the Confederate attack we know as Pickett's Charge. He's got a front row seat, because look to the east. Can everybody see that large red barn? Yeah. You got the large red barn, a grove of trees, and then there's another monument, a tall obelisk in the distance. But to the left of that obelisk is another smaller grove of trees. Yeah. That is the famous copse of trees.
Lee up on top with his trusty steed Traveler.
Okay, check this out. I think I got it now.
Down there on the other side of those trees, the Southerners, under Lee's direction, headed across this field. Pickett's Charge, they got mowed down, more than 60% casualties.
There'll be over 22,000 casualties. So you folks visited Antietam the other day. The bloodiest single day in American history, over 23,000 casualties. Day 2 here at Gettysburg is going to approach that 23,000. We're going to be just short of the 23,000 here.
In Virginia, Longstreet's Corps. This monument depicts a wounded Louisiana artilleryman clutching a battle flag as a spiritual figure above him holds a flaming cannonball and sounds a trumpet.
We're going to discuss this July 2nd, 1863. We've moved south of the town of Gettysburg. We've moved along Seminary Ridge, and at this point, you see just the roof line of a large red barn in the distance. Rear, the trees, that's Copes Hill. In fact, General Meade will establish a very famous battle line known as the famous Fishhook Line. Looking to the east, sees the Emmitsburg Road to his front. See how the ground rises up to the Emmitsburg Road? Well, after you cross over it, it dives down. In other words, there's a ridge line that runs the entire length of the Emmitsburg Road, just how the Fishhook Line is taking shape. All because
Took
of one
along street
officer.
7 hours to get in
He is
place.
perhaps the most controversial officer here. His name is General Sickles. He's the only officer who commands a corps that is not militarily trained, not a West Point graduate. He was a New York congressman prior to the war. Part of that corrupt Democratic machine in New York. And this is the weakest part of General Sickles' advance line. Weak spot, and on the late afternoon of the 2nd, a brigade of Mississippians will strike the peach orchard from the west. At the same time, a brigade of South Carolinians will strike the peach orchard from the south, and they quickly crush the peach orchard position. 3+ hours of combat in this wheat field. At one time or another, 12,000 Union soldiers will battle parts of 6 Confederate brigades. This wheat field will exchange hands 6 times. By the time the fighting is done, there's over 6,000 casualties alone in that wheat. 1,000 men killed outright. It was said you could walk large parts of that wheat field without touching the ground, going from body to body. As General Meade was riding to the peach orchard, he's going to turn to one of his staff officers, General Warren. He says, "Warren, I hear a little peppering going on down at yonder little hill." He says, "I wish you would ride over, and any serious action going on, attend to it." And he knows the critical importance of it. So he climbs on a boulder and he looks to the west. And what does he see? Thousands of Confederate soldiers moving, getting information for attack. Those are James Longstreet's soldiers. To attack, moving up the southern face of Little Round Top. So beginning at 4:45 and raging for the next 90 minutes, we'll have combat on Little Round Top. We literally had to be billy goats to make our way up there. We couldn't even discharge our weapons. Colonel of the 20th Maine, and he'll lead his men as part of the brigade to Little Round Top. And eventually he's going to be forced to conduct a bayonet charge because a large regiment of Alabamians, close to 500 men strong. And Chamberlain's boys rally and drive the Alabamians back. But after the 5th attack, in an hour of combat, he's lost 30% of his men. They're running out of ammunition, and his men are exhausted. But he can look to his front. He can see the Alabamians reforming for perhaps a 5th attack that he fully believed his men could not withstand. He gathers his men about him and tells them, "We're going to make a charge." And he would shout, "Bayonet!" And he said the word was enough. He said his boys sprang upon the Alabamians just 30 yards to their front, and he said the event was surprising. He said many of the Alabamians' first line threw down their arms and surrendered. He approached one Alabama lieutenant, and that same lieutenant reached to his side, withdrew his sword, and surrendered to Colonel Chamberlain. Colonel Chamberlain eventually is awarded the Medal of Honor. When Longstreet's assault is coming to an end, turned back by, finally, the Union forces, General Ewell will elect to launch a division-size attack against Culp's Hill. So in the dead of night, fighting will rage on Culp's Hill to almost 10:30 at night. A breastwork is a fortification made of stone, log, and cordwood. It's a remarkable engineering feat. 600 yards and supervised by the oldest Union general here at Gettysburg, General George Sears Green. They called him Pop. He was 62 years of age. But he was a graduate of West Point, became a civil engineer after about 1836 when he resigned. But when the war began, he re-enlisted. The Confederates are eventually turned back. Finally, on July 2nd, the fighting comes to an end about 10:30 at night. The battle on July 2nd results in over 22,000 casualties. So in 2 days of battle, we have about 38,000 casualties. But even with Lee's men being driven back by the end of the day on July 2nd, he believed that with a little coordination of his attacks, that his men could have carried the day. Sickles' command will be driven back from their advanced position. But at the end of the day, where are they? Where they should have been in the first place. Back on Cemetery Ridge. And the official line at the end of the day on July 2nd is intact. Attack one more powerful Confederate assault we know it as Pickett's charge.